speaker. So I just wanted to give kind of a rundown of things that are going on with the OU Scan chapter, and then I'll pass it off to co-cams to give their kind of spiel, kind of introduce themselves as well to people that aren't aware of who they are, so we can kind of get a meld of the two chapter memberships and kind of understand what we're up to on each side. So so if you don't know who I am, I'm Tyler Stanfield. I'm the OU Scan president for the student chapter, and I'm a senior meteorology student here, and it's kind of the main things that you need to know about me. But so moving on to the actual announcements itself, just wanted to give a kind of a spiel about the AMS annual meeting. So we had a really great time at the AMS annual meeting up in Boston. It was very warm, probably a lot of hot air from all of the Mets up there, but it was I think that was probably the most overused joke while we were there. But so that was a really good and really helpful meeting. We had a great time mingling with all the other chapters. We got to meet really great people. Our poster did pretty well. Obviously didn't place this time around, but still great experience, and look forward to seeing what the chapter does in the future, as well as the AMS and the national org as well. So just as a side note, for anybody that was unable to make it to the AMS annual meeting this year, I was going to show you guys how to access the recordings for AMS. So if you go to the if you go to the main page of AMS, there we go. If you go to the main page, you'll be able to access this online program. If you go to the online program, it'll open up this kind of web page, and if you go down to the browse recordings, it gives you access to all of the recordings for the various conferences that occurred at the AMS annual meeting. So you have access to all of those talks and things like that were going on at the meeting in Boston. So use it as a resource. It's a lot of great people, a lot of great talks, so definitely check those out. Moving back onto the presentation. That's not what I wanted. That's not at all what I wanted. You get it? Hold up. There we go. Okay. So moving on, I just wanted to pass it off to, where is she? There you go. Oh, Charles, okay. We're gonna pass it off to Charles to talk a little bit about co-cams and give some updates on their chapter as well. So I'll pass it off to him.
All right, I don't have a lot for co-cams, but just an introduction of it, and hopefully I'll get the acronym right. But Central Oklahoma Chapter of the American Meteorological Society and National Weather Association. It's basically a group for professional meteorologists and anybody interested in the weather, kind of like a local chapter that you could join post-student life, if you will. So if you like AMS or SCAN now, and wherever you go in the future, there's probably a local chapter that you can join as well. So that's co-cams /NWA. For the co-cams members, we are going to be collecting dues this year of $15. That's really mainly just to support the picnic that we're going to have during the summer. Last year, we catered Rudy's. We'll probably do something similar to that this year. And then also, we're planning some kind of group social event, and any cost with that, your dues will help to support. So, no rush for this meeting, but in the future, we'll be looking to collect those dues from co-campus members, and students, of course, are free at any time. And then the only other announcement I have is the abstracts for the National Weather Association annual meeting, which is in Tulsa this year. That website's probably going to be open by tomorrow, and the abstracts will be due by March 19th. So if you're looking to go to the NWA annual meeting, look to get those abstracts in the next month or so. And I think that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Charles. So yeah, that is co-cams. If you didn't know them already, now you know. So moving on, we have some chapter updates to go over. So over the break, we've been working on some great new things for the chapter. One thing is working on new merchandise. We've been kind of coordinating and trying to figure out new ways to obviously make revenue for our chapter outside of just dues, so that we can supplement our members and continue to improve our chapter. So one avenue of that is obviously merchandise. Other things, we've been working on the website, updating the website, and making it more functional for people to be able to look at it and find what they want pretty quickly and move on. One thing for sure is actually you can go to the homepage of the website and you can immediately see all of the upcoming dates for all of our meetings. First thing, pretty much, that's the first thing you'll see. So that's very helpful. Other news is if it runs slow, if it's been running slow for you or anything like that, it's actually, there's been a little bit of a incident with some of the web servers being overwhelmed with various hackers and things like that, but it's not as big of an issue. John's handling it, so that's why. If it's running slow for you, that's probably why. So other thing is we have a link to the survey that we have that Katie developed for us, and it's basically just kind of giving an idea of how you perceive the chapter. We want to just get your feedback on how things have gone for you so far this semester, how things can be improved for us. So I would definitely highly suggest, if you want to give your feedback, this is the easiest way to get directly to us. We'll obviously take your opinion in consideration, so please fill that out. It's really short. You don't have to even fill out all of the questions if you don't want to. It's really important for us to get your feedback and be able to know what you want, so we can obviously cater to your wants and needs. So other things, intramural sports, if Nolan wants to give a quick spiel on that's going.
Hey, we made the playoffs in football.
Yeah, we did.
Basketball's not going so well.
Yeah. So we had a pretty relatively eventful end to the football season, but basketball's not doing so hot. It's been kind of status quo, to be honest. But you know, it is what it is. We'll have more details about co-ed soccer and also potentially softball in the coming months. I think the deadline for that is next month, so we'll keep you up to date on that. Constitutional amendments. That's just basically some things that we've been doing to amend the Constitution, make it more functional, and obviously close a lot of loopholes that could, make it less functional in the future. So one thing, for example, is we've created a tiebreaker clause for our elections, because that was not a thing apparently. So that, we haven't had any major tiebreakers before, but if we ever do, we obviously need to have a clause for that. Further to note is the Constitution will be available on the website shortly, so you can have easy access to it and be able to review it and see anything that you. It's mainly for the officers, but if you really want to look at it, you can. Outreach committee, we have initiated that within the board to help out our outreach coordinator Elizabeth over there, and basically it's helping to streamline our efforts to outreach to schools and various community programs and things like that, to be able to make our presence more readily available to people in the local Central Oklahoma area. Let's see. What point am I? Goal. We have a goal in mind, obviously, for this. Is we want to definitely make our presence known for the university and at the national level as well. So we obviously want to make sure that all of these accomplishments don't go unnoticed. So obviously, we want to intend on planning to apply to the student chapter of the year and the local chapter of the year for AMS and NWA, so that we can make those accomplishments known to the national organizations and kind of give OU a little bit of a boost. We haven't actually won the award before, so it'd be a really cool accomplishment to see that happen. Any other things regarding officer meeting minutes or meeting minutes in general? If you miss a meeting here, or if you want to know what's going on in officer meetings, the website is also really, really a great resource to be able to access those. So those are the big updates for the chapter. One little thing that I wanted to also note was Joseph Trujillo gave me updates on the Latinx committee that's newly developed and added to the AMS. So I basically just kind of copy pasted his email to me because he sent it to me about an hour ago. So I just wanted to make sure that I got all of the key points in there for him. So yeah, if you have interest in joining the Latinx committee and also fill out the survey, that would be really helpful for him, and it helps the AMS obviously to basically be able to expand, and it also helps this committee kind of get its feet off the ground and move forward from the foundational level. So I'm gonna just kind of leave that up there for the video. Break the fourth wall for a second, just so that people can see it on the recording. But moving forward, we also, just to make note of the objectives for Chapter of the Year, kind of got out of order, but Chapter of the Year, we've accomplished plenty so far, obviously. And you guys have been a part of all of that, and that's really awesome. I'm so happy to see that. But we do have things in mind moving forward for our student chapter that will be, looking to help basically keep our chapter moving in the right direction. One thing, for example, is we are looking to make a historical archive for the OU-SCAN chapter, and that's basically to help all of the, presidents and leadership that come after us to be able to understand what the history of the student chapter is and be able to learn from things that we've done and things that we, things that we could do better in the future, so that basically they know moving forward, what they can do to keep moving the chapter in the right direction. Other things, so here's the spring schedule for us. We are at the February 11th general meeting, but we do have a hurricane forecasting workshop with Dr. Michael Brennan that was rescheduled for next Wednesday, and that's going to be through Google Hangouts. But yeah, that will be next Wednesday with Owl. Be sure to attend. I'm sure I think they're getting pizza as well, but yeah. So that'll be next week. We also have a resume building help session with Leslie Ilston. She'll be doing that on Monday at 3:30 and 13:50. That'll be in preparation for the career fair that happens on that Friday. And then our next general meeting is tentatively set at the 10th, but we are taking consideration exam dates and things like that. So if we do change the date, we'll obviously make you guys aware of that. If you're not in the group me for the SCAN, you can take a picture of that, and it'll give you direct access to the group me so that you can keep with chapter updates within the, within that group me itself. Other things I just made note of, we are exercising March 5th and 25th, or 24th as backup dates for midterms and spring break. And this is a member's pick option for the speaker, so we'll be giving you guys the option of what the speaker will be in the group me, so you can vote on the speaker in the group me, and then we can actually bring them. So basically we want to give you guys what you want. So we'll give you guys options, and then you pick which one that you want for the speaker. Moving forward, other announcements. Time capsule is, we actually have a little box back there currently, and that's basically, as we try to figure out what we're going to do for the time capsule, our plan is basically to have this time capsule ready to move and be quote-unquote buried. Whether it's actually buried or not, it's not quite known. I'm not sure we really have access to or permission to bury something on NWC property, but we're going to probably put it in the back room, buried quote-unquote in the closet, and basically leave it so that we have basically the people in the 75th anniversary of our chapter will be able to open it and see what was happening in 2020. So it's something that our chapter hasn't done before, so I thought it would be a good idea to kind of give an idea of, what was going on in the student chapter now, and be able to advance that all the way out to 2036, which is mind-blowing. Feels like a long way away, but it's probably not. Other things, contest winners. I want to make a special shout out to Cheyenne Parker and Coleman Hess. They won our 2 merchandise contests, so I believe Coleman is not here, but Cheyenne is here, so I wanted to give her her prize. So, come on down. Let's give a round of applause for Cheyenne. So that's for guessing the most accurately guessing the first date of the first tornado in Oklahoma this year, which was January 10th this year, which is pretty early. That's pretty early. It's third earliest on record for the records that we have. So it's pretty crazy that we had it before our first visual snowfall in OKC. So other things, last big key point is the big event. Big event is going to be on April 18th, and we always have a meteorology student org team to go out and serve the community. So basically, I just wanted to give you guys instructions so that you guys can see how to join the big event team for meteorology. All of the student orgs do this every year. Bring your friends, anybody. It's open to anybody. But those are the main instructions. The main key point is make sure that you select meteorology student orgs on the organization or group section. If you select individual, then it's not going to pair you with the student org, and we won't be able to tell because you're not on the roster. So that's the key point. Make sure that you take a picture, or we'll probably link this in the group me itself and online. But just make sure that you do that so you can get access and join our big event team. So that being said, that's pretty much all of our big key points. So with that being said, I will pass it on off to our speaker, Dr. Summer Erickson.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. I appreciate your time tonight. I know it's late, you guys are probably tired, but it's really great to be here with you all this evening. I'm used to talking to a different group, so it's nice to be back among some colleagues and some friends and some new faces. The next generation of meteorologists coming out of OU, myself being an OU alumni, so very happy to be back, and I really appreciate the invitation to speak with you this evening. I'm really just going to talk a little bit about my experiences and what kind of got me to where I'm at, and then kind of go over a few things just to give you some ideas and things to think about, and cover a little bit about, in addition to myself and my role. So currently, I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but my current role is the FEMA Liaison to the Storm Prediction Center. I have been there now for about 6 years. And I work with Bill and Jared and a few others in here, Liz, who's not here this evening. So it's really been a great opportunity and an experience to learn a lot about emergency management, but to also really learn even more about meteorology. When you're really focused in and honed in on a specific area, it really does kind of help you understand something even more than you ever imagined. So it's been a really great opportunity, and I really enjoy the job that I do. It's a lot of work, but it's definitely worthwhile. So I will come back to that a little bit later, but I just wanted to kind of give you a basic overview of where I'm at. So first of all, we're going to talk about a little bit about emergency management. I'll give a historical perspective, talk again a little bit about my path. FEMA, I know sometimes that's a bad four-letter word depending on the audience I'm talking to, so by the end of tonight it'll be okay. My current role, a little bit about weather and emergency management, just to kind of give you guys some ideas, the importance of it and what I see as the future. And then at the end, of course, we will certainly have an opportunity to address any questions that you all may have. Whether you're here kind of, considering what your options are going to be when you leave the university, or if you're going to move on in school, or for those of you who are already in your career, if you're interested in, working on different projects, or if you're kind of interested in crossing over, those types of things. So it really, I try to include elements that would, interests everyone. So, and if you need clarification, please don't hesitate to stop me, but like I said, I'll have plenty of time at the end for questions. So, emergency management, we hear about that term a lot, but what exactly is it? It can be called a lot of different things. So sometimes it's public safety, sometimes people say first responders, sometimes it's disaster management, risk management, crisis management, emergency response. There's a million different terms, but the most common terminology we use is emergency management. It's very, very multifaceted. It requires a tremendous amount of different skills from across different areas, not only within disciplines, but in terms of personalities and in coordination and collaboration. And it varies greatly, okay, across a lot of different levels. So, although I currently work for FEMA, as you'll see here, I used to work for the local emergency management. We also have the states, the tribes, the territories, and then in addition, we also have private nonprofits and non-governmental agencies that also do emergency management. So there's a wide variety and array of different areas if this is something that you're interested in pursuing in the future or even transitioning over to now, because there's so many different areas at different levels, at different pay grades, at different responsibilities, different hazards, different focuses, everything, you name it, there's something out there for you. And I know the Weather Service in general is trending towards that whole decision support services. This is really where they're trying to get their focus in, and this really does cover the entire weather enterprise. So historically speaking, prior to the 1950s, it was really ad hoc, okay? It wasn't really well established. So there was actually 128 different pieces of legislation prior to 1950 to actually address emergency and disaster management. And then we kind of went into the civil defense era where we really focused on that nuclear threat, the Cold War. And then FEMA really didn't come about until 1979, okay? And so that combined all these different disaster elements, legislation, agencies into one. There was over 100 different agencies that were housing or partaking in some part of disaster emergency management prior to the development of FEMA. So if you can think about that, 100 different agencies doing different things. Certainly when they created FEMA and put it all together, really made a big difference by making sure it was more streamlined. And so then we had, of course, 9/11, which really kind of brought us backwards a little bit in some of the progress we had made. We're really focused on some of those civil defense ideas and more terroristic notions. The Department of Homeland Security was created, which is where FEMA is housed today. Of course, Katrina happened, which really made us really reflect, the government and society as a whole reflect and balance the hazards that we're focusing on. Instead of just focusing on one here or there, we had to focus on terror and also on those natural hazards. We couldn't forget one or the other. They were both important. And then we had Sandy, which really spurred us into making sure we were doing better with mitigation. And then, of course, here we are in present day where we're really expanding into other areas. That includes things like border patrol and immigration. Okay, so for example, FEMA's actually down there right now supporting some of the humanitarian effort. We're involved in cybersecurity. We're involved with the coronavirus. Okay, all of these different things we're involved with. Okay, so emergency management has expanded greatly over time, and we're not just sort of that ad hoc type of thing. We're continuing to add to our repertoire as we move forward and things become more and more apparent. And of course, population changes, climate changes, things like that. So it's becoming ever more important, really with each passing day. And like I said, there's something in there for everybody. So. Given some of the challenges, though, if we look back in time, we will see that there was a lot of different reasons why emergency management has evolved slowly, okay? Because it's really difficult to define what a disaster is, okay? We can define it as a scientist, we can define it as an emergency manager, we can define it as a lot of different folks. So defining what a disaster actually was, what the criteria was, how that would work, actually defining emergency management, identifying what hazards to focus on, giving preference towards hazards versus disasters, and being hazards of science, disasters of vulnerabilities and population, deciding what variables, what partners, so basically a whole litany of how do you define an emergency manager. When you talk about meteorologists, they all have different specialties, right? You have hydrologists, climatologists, meteorologists, they might have severe weather, hurricanes, winter weather, flooding, all kinds of different things. So when we're talking about those types of things, the same kinds of issues were coming up in emergency management. Who was an emergency manager? Who was included in that group? So over time, it really made us think about, could we coexist with natural hazards, terrorism, public health? Could that be one entity? Okay, so over time, these were the kinds of discussions that were happening. So for me, I started out as a Bachelor of Science in Atmospheric Science at the University of Miami. And actually, I started my own student AMS club when I was there. We didn't have one at the time, and so I started it. Okay, so from there, they actually added an NWA after I left, and they've done some other things. So that was one of the things that I found very valuable. I certainly see value in what you all are trying to do here. It helped me tremendously in getting where I'm at today. In addition to the internships that I did a National Weather Service internship, and I did an RU internship here at OU. And I can't say enough about both of those. They taught me a lot about what I wanted, but also about what I didn't want. Okay? So it really was helpful to kind of, get those experiences, get to know some of those folks, have those connections, and understand what it was that I wanted and what I didn't want. When I was a bachelor student, honestly, I could not have imagined that I would be where I'm at today. That wasn't necessarily something that I had planned for. I knew I wanted to do something outside of meteorology in terms of helping people, but I didn't really understand what emergency management was. So I was just focusing on, making sure I was being a good student, starting that club, and having those opportunities. During that time I was there, we had that club, and we visited with the broadcasts, we visited with the Weather Service. I worked as a research intern with the Hurricane Center, as well as the school. I wanted to try everything so that I could figure out what it was I wanted. And then I was able to come out here and study meteorology with a social science focus, and I really started to, get into the meteorology here. I was a teaching assistant and a research assistant here, and then I decided to start volunteering outside. Okay, so I volunteered with the Red Cross and United Way, and most particularly, I started volunteering with local emergency management. And actually this evening we have David Grizzle, who's here, who is the emergency management coordinator for the city of Norman, who I did an extensive amount of work with. I started a volunteer program. We had lots of different events that we ran. I volunteered with him and several other folks in the state of Oklahoma that we did all kinds of different projects on. And I really got to understand that emergency management is where I was wanting to be. And so if you are thinking about or just interested in volunteering, or you need some extra credit time, you can certainly speak with David and he'd be happy to work you through the process. We can always use volunteers in emergency management. That's the one thing about emergency management. There's always more than enough work for everybody. So I really got my start here. I really decided that this, after volunteering and understanding and experiencing a lot of different things, that's where I wanted to go. So that was where I was headed. So after a few years, I got my MS degree. I did decide to go on for the PhD. Back in the day, when I started my PhD though, they actually only had one emergency management PhD program in the country, just one. And it was in North Dakota. Really wasn't that interested. So I stayed here, a little bit warmer. So I stayed here. And I talked to the university and I talked to the School of Meteorology, and we were able to make a deal work where I was able to combine what I thought was most relevant for emergency management and created an interdisciplinary PhD centered on meteorology, but I added components like communication and geography. Okay? In addition to that, I also did some study in areas like public administration, political science, sociology, and a litany of other different areas. So I really wanted to understand all of the elements that I thought would be relevant for trying to be the best emergency manager and meteorologist I could be in terms of conveying that information, utilizing that information, and really helping with the decision-making processes. So I really had a focus on weather disaster management. That was specific to me. That's not necessarily the path that any of you have to take. With your meteorology degrees that you have, you certainly can move on or you can stop. There's lots of opportunities at all different levels. It's really just about what you want, okay, and what you do. And you don't have to even be an emergency manager. So say you want to work for the Weather Service. You can do these kinds of things in the Weather Service, okay? So the field is really growing and the opportunities are there. Or if you decide you want to work for a private sector, you can work for the private sector and do these types of things. Meteorology is a really valuable skill set. And a lot of folks, I know probably a lot of your families and friends who may not understand meteorology always think you're going to be on TV, which is great. If that's what you want to do, perfect. If not, you want to go in the weather service, that's also great. Like I said, they have these opportunities to do this type of thing. Or maybe you're interested in going to the private sector. Or maybe you're just interested in using your skill set in another way. That's who I was. I wanted the meteorology base, but I wanted to apply it in a way that was extremely useful. And when I went into emergency management, I realized that there really was a huge gap, that they weren't understanding that information, and that it was so pivotal for the decisions they were making and for the safety of our citizens, that I decided to go down that route. So once I started in there, in emergency management, the local, state level, I couldn't really reach FEMA. They're unreachable. They're very mysterious. They just kind of close themselves off. They don't really let people in. They're emotionally messed up, I'm not gonna lie. Because they really just, they get beat up a lot, they don't trust, because they get kind of, put down, they're misunderstood, so they're a little introverted, but that's okay. So, now that I'm inside, it's a whole different world, but on the outside, I couldn't get to them. And so it was really, disheartening for my research at the time, which was focusing on communicating weather information to emergency managers, but how can I finish a study on this when I can't get to the top? So what I ended up doing was applying for an internship with FEMA that I got. And so I was able to work into the system and opened a whole new world of understanding what they were doing, how things work, and then certainly set my career in the motion that it is now. So I'm very thankful for that opportunity, but it was really difficult to just really understand. And now that they certainly trust me, it was really just about gaining their trust and having a good understanding of who does what, how this works, and who to go to. So a lot of times, like I said, I remember when I was a student, when I wasn't working with FEMA, and they just were so hard to get. You could never talk to anybody, you could never see anybody, you could never do anything. There was just, it seemed like a black hole, that this agency existed, but there was nothing there, okay? I assure you that's not true. We have about 8,000 people that work for you every day. And they do a lot of great work. So, we have our ups and downs. Not everything we do is great. I'm not going to say that it is, because it's not. But we really try hard. We're really working for the American people to make things better. And so we rely on our fellow citizens, though, to help us in that process. And so we're constantly changing. If you end up working for FEMA one day, you'll understand it is a change agency. We change all the time. And the reasons we do that are for the better. We're always trying to strive for better. Okay, so that's where we are. But they're really been a great agency to work for. But they are a little bit skittish. Okay, so don't scare the FEMA people. It's okay. So but like I said, once you get inside, it's a whole new world. But prior to that, I also did some Operations Proving Ground stuff up through Sims in Kansas City. I worked with FEMA Region 7 in Kansas City, which is where I got my start as an intern, and then had the opportunity to come back to Oklahoma and implement the position that I'm in now, which didn't exist at the time. So technically I work for FEMA headquarters out of DC, but I am stationed here in Norman with the SPC. I'm embedded with the SPC year-round. So it can be very confusing for IT folks when I have to call them, and they're very confused because they think I work in Region 6, but I don't. I work in there, I just don't work for them. So let's talk a little bit about FEMA. Like I said, sometimes they're not always well received. But they're really just misunderstood, okay? So when we talk about emergency management, we have FEMA, we have states, tribals, and territories, we have locals, and then we have all the different partners, okay? We got nonprofits, Red Cross, we got, just a litany of, you name it. I can't even imagine how many partners we have, because it's so numerous. It's hundreds and thousands that we work with all the time. So what is it that we actually do? We're not the first responders. We're not there to be the first ones to show up, okay? Those are going to be your fire, police, your local emergency management. Those are the ones that are there, okay? When those capabilities are exceeded, they're going to go higher to the state level, okay? When those capabilities are exceeded, they're going to go higher, and that's when they get to FEMA. So we get a lot of people who are really interested in FEMA, and they really want to do great things. And we're excited for them, but then they get there, and then they kind of get sad because they think, we want to be on the front lines. We want to be the one digging in that dirt. That's not where FEMA is, okay? We are we're the Federal Emergency Management Agency, but really we should be called the Federal Emergency Management Administration. That's what we are. We are paperwork, we are funding, we are help. Okay? That is what we are. And it's not a perfect system. And there are rules, because there's always going to be rules, right? And so you have to follow those rules, and you have to have certain criteria in place. And we won't go too much into some of those rules, but if you have questions, we can always talk about those rules. But when it comes down to disasters, it's just not a fair game, okay? No matter how you play it. It doesn't matter if it's you or me or somebody else that's impacted. It's never going to be a fair game, okay? It's never. Whether it's one person or 10,000 people, it's never fair. Disasters don't play fair, okay? So those are the things that we're focusing on, okay? So we're at the top. We're there to really help when, everything else is not working. So we do a lot of different things, which I'll kind of go here when we talk about the divisions. But we have 10 different regions, and we have headquarters in DC, okay? We have different divisions. We have, of course, our leadership. We have field teams. They go in after disasters. They will set up their joint field offices. We have regional offices that can activate to support. We have national and regional watch centers that are 24/7. They maintain situational awareness 24/7. They're monitoring threats, primarily weather. Okay, so it's a big one. And then the big motto of FEMA, of course, is we always joke and say that the F and the A are flexible and adaptable. Okay, those are the two important things we need to be, because we need to be ready, we need to be prepared, and we need to get out there. Okay, a former administrator used to say, "Go big, go smart, go fast." Okay, so you can't get back time. So we got to get out there and make sure that we're ahead of the game, because we can't go back and get time. But if we're there and nothing happens, that's okay, right? That's okay. But if something happens and we're not there, we can't go back. So just keeping that in mind. And then another leadership who just left the agency recently, his thing was that I don't need 30 bodies, I need 10 bodies. Okay, so what he means by that is that we were, sometimes we could have, you can fill seats, right? But make it worth their while. Make it worth your time, right? Okay? We're all going to work together, and we need to all be there. And if we can't, it's not going to work, okay? We don't need 30 people in a room, we need 10 people that are going to do something right. So when it comes to emergency management, we have a couple different phases. We have preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. So this is known as comprehensive emergency management. Now, when FEMA was created in 1979, prior to that, there was a Governor's Association report that had actually put this forth to the government and asked them to basically create FEMA. Okay? And in that report is when they started talking about this idea of comprehensive emergency management. Now, ironically, it's actually difficult to say where this idea originated, okay? It's not cited in there specifically that it was taken from somewhere else, because for whatever reason, make sure if you're in classes doing research, cite your sources. There's not one source cited in that document, not one. I'm willing to bet that they took something from somewhere, okay? But it's not cited. So we don't know if it was initially just in that document and they did create it and it was original, or if it took it from somewhere else, okay? But that's the first known time that we understand where this is coming from. Like I said, the 4 phases, and it essentially begins and ends with that mitigation. So this is a continuous cycle. It's not just standalone like we kind of used to treat it. And I think David can talk to that later, that we used to kind of say, well, you're over here in your preparedness, and you're over here in your response, and you're over here in recovery. Well, that's not how the real world works, right? So we kind of understood this is a cycle. It's going on all the time, and some of these things overlap. So preparedness, we're talking about enhancing the capacity to respond to an event. Response, immediate actions to save lives, protect property and the environment. Sounds very familiar. It should, right? It sounds very much like the Weather Service. Recovery, restore essential services and repair damage. Mitigation, reduce and eliminate the risk of hazards. So the missions between FEMA and the Weather Service overlap very much so. Okay, they're pretty much the same. We all have the same mission. We just have different tasks that we're trying to accomplish, but we have the same mission. So in preparedness, of course, we're doing outreach, we're doing exercise programs, training, after action reviews, lessons learned. We take note of those. Those are important to us. We're always trying to do better. We want to fix problems, okay? Response, certainly we're doing planning, operations, logistics, and communications. And then we have these things called incident management assistant teams. Those are kind of like the FEMA first responders. So they have to be able to go out within 2 hours of an event. For example, the Moore, Oklahoma tornado in 2013. There's a region, remember, in Denton, Texas. They were there. As soon as that happened, they were on their way. okay? They're two-hour drive, and they were there that night, okay? So they have to be ready to leave within 2 hours. On nights, when I talk about myself a little bit, that's kind of why I'm here, so that I can give people a heads up. So instead of just kind of waiting and then a big event happens and then they go, oh, I better get ready. They could be ready already, okay? So when they're already ready to go, I say, today you need to be prepared, and then a big event happens, they're already out the door, okay? They're not having to wait to get ready, to get packed, to do whatever they gotta do. Recovery, damage assessments, individual assistance, public assistance. We don't really talk too much about that here, but I can certainly answer any questions, because those are some of the programs that we offer. Individual assistance, if you yourself get hit by an event. Public assistance, if a jurisdiction does. Mitigation, floodplain management, the National Flood Insurance Program, and hazard mitigation grants. So mitigation has been in the news a lot lately because the flood insurance program and also because of the grant programs are being discussed as possibly something to consider and for budgetary purposes. So those are the primary things. This is how FEMA is divided, okay? So honestly, I worked in emergency management for 7 years and had no idea how FEMA was comprised of until I worked for the agency, okay? It's kind of that deep state, okay? They just keep that all inside. I don't think they do it intentionally. They're just really focused. But this is how it's divided. We have those 4 primary divisions, okay? So they're each in their own little areas, but they all work together very well. There's a lot of crossover. So if you're interested in this type of thing, there's a couple of policies that you're really going to want to take a look at, because we are the guiding frameworks for the state and local and everybody, okay? They have to follow these frameworks in order to respond, in order to get money, in order to do those kinds of things. So the National Response Framework guides those efforts, okay? In conjunction with the National Incident Management System, provides the template for how to manage those incidents. The Incident Command System is how to command and run those events. And then we have the National Planning Frameworks, which are newer, and that really takes each area out on its own and gives a little bit more detail, okay, about mitigation, response, and recovery. And in the past couple of years, they've actually broken up preparedness into prevention and protection. So, because we do have some new, like I mentioned, we're adding to our areas and our hazards we address. We now do cyber, we now do terrorism. So prevention and protection more so than preparedness. So we continue to expand in time. So emergency support functions. These are our primary identified main partners. Okay, so if you're sitting here thinking, I'm interested in maybe doing something like this, but I don't know where to start. Okay, well, do you have something of particular interest? For example, I know there's a lot of meteorologists up in Boulder who are doing some work on transportation. Okay, so they're applying their knowledge of weather to transportation. Okay, maybe you're someone who's interested in firefighting or planning or public works or even search and rescue. You can combine your two. Okay, you don't have to stick with one. That's the beauty of having a meteorology degree. You can apply it in so many different things. So if you were always interested in working with, search and rescue and a meteorologist, perfect. We love you. We could use you. Okay, those are 2 things, we don't have a lot of combinations over. Okay, so for example, in my role, I'm one of the only meteorologists in the agency. And in fact, I believe I was the first actual titled meteorologist. We had meteorologists working for the agency, but none of them actually had the official title of meteorologist. So I was the same, a 1340 series as the Weather Service. I am that, okay? I am that at FEMA. I was the first one, okay? So we had others who were doing meteorology work. We had others who worked for us, but I was that first position, and we're starting to grow that, okay? We're starting to realize we need more. So these are areas that you can all go into, not having to just stick with just weather. You can apply your weather in a variety of ways. External affairs, energy, lots of different areas, okay? So you don't have to just stick with one thing, or if you don't like planning, don't do planning, okay? You can do more hands-on type of stuff. It's totally up to you. So for me, what do? I enhance communication, visualization, and dissemination of information between the SPC, FEMA, and our partners. So essentially, the SPC puts out their forecast, and I'm translating that. I'm a translator for FEMA, emergency management partners, okay? I write all that, I rewrite a lot of that, I synthesize it, and I send it to them, okay? I support our FEMA posture readiness. I'm helping them decide if they need to activate in case they might need to help, or if they can activate and go ahead and help different folks, okay, and be prepared for that. Enhanced GIS data capabilities for severe weather analysis, including pre and post event, so we can look at what is the outlook saying here, what kind of population's in there, and then after event we can talk about, okay, this tornado went through this neighborhood, how many people, how many structures, that type of thing. In addition, I conduct and develop and conduct weather training. That's what I do during non-severe weather season, right, which is never. And Bill can attest to that. Support planning, develop scenarios and exercises, participate in partner meetings. And what happens at FEMA is that we use the Weather Service a lot for a lot of things. But if you're new to the agency and you're deployed in the field, you don't always know who to go to. Okay, so if you come on board and you're helping somebody in the field doing damage assessments, you don't know who does severe weather information, so you don't know to go to SPC. So I'm sort of the point of contact those folks can reach out to and say, hey, I need this information, and I can send them there. Okay, I can say, hey, you need to go to the National Weather Service in this area, or you need to go to the Weather Prediction Center, or you need to go to the River Forecast Center, or I send them oftentimes to the National Weather Service regions so they can help them. Okay, so I just get them in the right direction so that they know who to go to. Because when we work in meteorology, we know very well who to call and who does what. But when you're the person on the street who doesn't, then you don't know where to get that information. Okay. So some of the things that I do, I monitor threats, I participate in a daily headquarters briefing, I do reports, I do tons and tons and tons of coordination. I do regional partner briefings, again, that GIS support, specific leadership briefings that Bill Bunting helps with on higher end, moderate, and high risk days, and then assisting if we were to activate for a big event, they'll bring in extra people that will have to help get assets, generators, blue tarps, whatever's needed for an event, and I can help them as well. In addition to personal safety, right? Because if a tornado happens, you got people in the field, you might have more bad weather. Okay, so making sure we're also safe. We don't need more people to add to the mix, right? So how do we utilize this information? There are three primary things. I don't think this was probably too much of a surprise that emergency managers in general, you need historical data, they need, what's going to happen and where are we right now. Okay, so they need all kinds. It's not just one type. They need all kinds of data depending on the role. And they get that information from a variety of outlets, okay? It would be nice if we could say they only got one, but that's not reality, okay? They're going to the Weather Channel, they're going to the internet, they're going to their apps, they're going to everyone. Their information, they're inundated with information, okay? It's almost too much for them to handle at times. So what are they doing with it? Situational awareness, analysis, communication, right? They're making sure that their constituents know. If they're a local emergency manager, they're trying to make sure their people are aware. Planning, making sure they know what could happen in their area, right? Disaster assistance, if something happens, getting the word out. And then, of course, decision making. Do we need to have more people around? Do we need to have less? Do we need to bring in, different generators? How's our food supply? Things like that, okay? So making those types of decisions. We do have some challenges, okay, when it comes to weather information, resource navigation. Even as a meteorologist, navigating National Weather Service websites is extremely difficult. Okay? Extremely. And knowledge and understanding and the terminology and interpreting that. Okay? So if I, as a meteorologist, I've been a meteorologist for 15 years, has difficulty finding data I know exist, I can't imagine how it is for someone who doesn't even know where to start. So resource navigation is huge. Knowledge and understanding, we can kind of overcome some of that as long as we're using terminology that we can explain, or at least use common terminology. Interpretation, making sure that we are interpreting to them correctly and they can interpret that correctly. Communication and messaging, again, making sure that they're getting the word out, they're understanding what to say. Okay, they need to understand enough to make sure their people are ready, okay, not get confused. And then equipment and technical is really, it varies depending, but there can be some interfaces that don't work with each other. But it's something to keep in the back of our minds, because if you can't talk in a disaster, you can't talk, okay? We just rely on every day that, all these cell phones I see here, they're gonna work. But they're not, okay? They're not. So we need to find other ways to talk. You need to remember those numbers. At least to your parents or somebody, one person, okay? Because it might not work. So we need to find ways of maintaining those things. In emergency management, we can't just say, well, the cell phone tower's down, that's it. No. One of the things FEMA does, We have the ability to go in after disaster and set up trucks that will set up those signals. We can talk, we have satellite phones, okay? So we can maintain that communication so we understand what's going on, what people need. Okay, so in terms of the problem, or the value maybe, weather directly accounts for 95% of the disasters. I mean, that's a no-brainer right there, okay? But honestly, it affects all, right? So if you have a hazmat incident, that's not weather related, but now we have a thunderstorm. Or maybe it's, in the middle of August and it's 110, okay? So weather's always involved. Doesn't matter if it's direct or not, always involved. But most emergency managers do not have that weather background, okay? They come from fire backgrounds, they come from police, law enforcement, they come from military, they come from all over. Most do not come from emergency management, okay? So they don't have that. Vulnerabilities, again, are continuing to increase. Climate change, population, increase that demand for subject matter experts like myself, okay? That's what they're looking for. They need someone to help them. And there's a big gap right now between weather and emergency management regarding impacts, okay? Who should know, who should talk about it? Okay, we don't do that very well. So I think both sides are trying to do that each, and hopefully we'll meet in the middle, okay? So the Weather Service can maybe understand a little bit more and provide a little more, and not get confused with hazards and impacts are not the same. 2 to 3 inches of rain, is that a hazard or an impact? Hazard, okay? You wouldn't be surprised how many people put that as an impact, okay? So just be careful. And then one of the quotes that I really liked the most was Administrator Fugate was talking one time at a town hall meeting with the agency, in which he expressed to us, we need information and we need it now, okay? Sometimes bad information is bad information, but if you have 2 sources of information, you never know which one's going to be right. And sometimes that actually can be worse, okay? So you're sort of going on that line between left, right, left, right, left, right, okay? So sometimes one credible source of information can be better than 2. So making sure we're just communicating that information and we're being consistent as we can. We're working with partners to create a weather enterprise that is consistent so that they're not getting 2 different pieces of information. It'd be great if they could get 2 or 3 pieces of information that are all the same, okay? So that's a goal. That's a goal of mine, anyway. So here are the principles. If you're sitting here thinking about this and you're like, I don't really know if that's for me, I don't know what I would need. Here's some skill sets you might want to consider. All hazards, all phases. So if you want to be more hands-on in response and you want to focus on hurricanes, you can do that. Okay? Or if you want to be more communication outreach, you can do that. Okay? So it's all across the board. Progressive anticipating, okay, always thinking forward. Making sure that we're working together, being collaborative, coordinating. Risk-driven, hazard identification, risk analysis, impact analysis is more than just weather, right? A tornado hitting, Dallas-Fort Worth versus, even Oklahoma City is a big difference, okay? So understanding what those impacts are about, being able to kind of provide that information. Being flexible, being adaptive, innovate, okay? That's where we're at. We could really use some innovation. And then the last one I highlighted here, because that's really where we are. If you're considering this type of a thing, science and knowledge-based approach. Emergency management is in the process of is professionalizing, which means that it's newer and it's growing, okay? It's growing. Like I said, 15 years ago, we had 1 PhD program. 1. That's it, okay? Now, today, we have hundreds of at least bachelor programs. So, not that you have to go into that specific area. You can use your skills you have as meteorologists, okay? You can use those, just apply them differently, okay? It's just about understanding where and how to apply them. So some of the final thoughts I have that I'll leave you with here is that, in my personal opinion, EM is the new face of weather. Okay, so I know there's probably a lot of weather people in here who probably cringe at me saying that. But I personally feel that there are a lot of public who don't necessarily go directly to the Weather Service. Okay, they're going more towards emergency management. They're the ones you see on TV. When there's a big hurricane happening, you'll oftentimes see a press conference with emergency management. okay? We need to make sure that they have the right information and that they're communicating it properly, okay? So we need to work together. The state of the field and the discipline is that emergency management is continuing to grow. It's becoming more and more important across all sectors, doesn't matter what it is. And it has implications across the entire weather enterprise, whether it be private, nonprofit, governmental, even Walmart has an emergency manager, okay? So making sure that we continue to work together and we're growing, we all need to be on the same page because they all impact one another. If Walmart can't manage themselves, then they can't help us either, okay? So we need to all be working at the same table. And then I highlighted this quote, which I found very interesting. This was actually from the former NWS director back in 1971. 1971, before all of us, myself included, was born. Public exposure to loss of life and property is increasing in spite of our best efforts in providing warning services. This new aspect of increasing population, increased exposure of large number of people to environmental hazards places a double burden on the profession. So back in 1971, the National Weather Service director was noticing that even though the Weather Service forecasts were improving, people were still dying, okay? And that is where emergency management comes in, and that's where we need to make sure we're communicating that weather information piece because it's so important. He knew the value of the weather information he had, and it wasn't working, okay? It wasn't working. So we need, and even that still stands somewhat today, right? We're still building in floodplains. We still have people die. Even though the forecasts have gotten better and better, we have all these tools. We got satellites and radars and all these different amazing technologies today. We have social media. We can actually talk to people. We can tell people to get out of the way if we have to. We can alert them. We can have beeps on their phones and people still die. We can do better, right? We can do better. So making sure that even though back in 1971, he noticed this, people are still dying even though the weather forecasts are getting better. We need to make sure we're communicating it properly, that it's getting to the right people, they're understanding it, and we help them make those decisions, okay? That's what's important. So, and I included that little picture up there just because it's kind of funny. Because the FEMA Center closed due to weather is kind of ironic, right? You're supposed to go to them when the weather gets bad. And B, because, like I said, I'm also there to help with safety. And if safety is going to put either survivors or our personnel in harm's way, then that's what we'll have to do for that day. So, just a kind of a thought to end on, that we're all in this together and that we are always looking out for one another. And that we can make sure that we get that information out there. Weather information is pivotal to our environment, to our economy, and to everyday life. I actually think about that sometimes. I think about two things. A, what was it like when you didn't know what the weather was going to be that day? And B, I always wonder what it would be like, life would be like not as a meteorologist, right? I have that advantage. So I don't know. I don't know what it's like to not be a meteorologist. But I kind of wonder what it would be like sometimes. Like, what would I know? What would I do? So I kind of think about that sometimes when I'm trying to think forward and see, areas that we could improve upon. What I might not know. Okay. So these are some things to think about. Like I said, you don't have to be an emergency manager. You don't have to go beyond school. These are things you can do right now. You can volunteer with the city. You can volunteer with the state. You can get internships. You can look at the emergency management policies. You can go online. FEMA has independent study courses. Okay, you can do. They're all free. You can read those policies. You can take some classes here. If you have some electives, you can take some public administration, poli-sci, geography, communications, whatever it may be. You can combine things. That's what emergency management is about. It's about combining different skill sets, okay? And we need it all. We need meteorology, and we need everything else. So anything that you have to the table, we certainly will accept in any capacity, whether it be a local, state, federal, nonprofit, private sector, whatever it may be. We need it because it's all of our safety that matters. So with that, I will take any questions or clarifications or comments.
Any questions?
So for what you're doing, would economics also be really important?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely would be. That was part of what I did my master's work, and so making sure that we're managing things, we're understanding what the economic impact would be in a disaster area, absolutely. For rebuilding, recovery, we have this buzzword now called resilience. It's all kind of revolved around that, making sure if we build 10 more businesses, is that going to help recover you know, an economy or not. I mean, absolutely, economics is a growing field in disaster management, and certainly, you know, especially in those areas where they're making decisions about rebuilding or moving and things like that. So economics absolutely is an area that you can easily, very easily get into for disasters. Yeah.
What sorts of roles you think FEMA might or should have in the future for conveying climate-related risks to the general public?
Okay, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I can bring that microphone up to him if you want.
Sure.
Part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask, what role do you think FEMA may be able to play in the future to convey climate-related risks to the general public?
Okay.
Yeah. Well, solve that.
Good question.
Yeah. If only we had 2 mics.
I know.
Only we did. Richard did. Yeah.
Very good question. When it comes to climate change, there's a lot we can do, actually, right? We can prepare communities. We can look at how they may be threatened. We can we can run programs. We can potentially, have different grants available. We can, make sure that we're managing for those risks. We're building to what the future of those areas might be. We can communicate that. We can do outreach. There's all kinds of different things. We can plan for it. So it certainly can be included in what it is that we're doing every day, and to some extent it is. In our hazard mitigation stuff that we're doing, we can try to, move things if an area is becoming more and more affected by flooding. We can do things like that. We can make sure that people understand the risk that they're under now versus what they may have been. We can make sure that we're managing the economics of the cost through the floodplain management and the flood insurance program. So lots of different ways.
Any other questions?
It's okay, I don't bite. I also have a bulletproof vest on too, so. I'm pretty tough skin these days. Yeah.
Summer, do you have any advice for students that might want to go the interdisciplinary route? How do you navigate that when sometimes programs are fairly structured?
It's a very good question. Honestly, I question myself some days why I went that route because it was more difficult than it would have been if I stayed in one venue, but I can't say enough about going interdisciplinary. The amount of extra knowledge I learned was extremely valuable to my career and where I'm at today. I wouldn't be here without it, but it is very difficult. So in terms of navigating that, if you are interested in maybe going an interdisciplinary route, adding those extra elements in, I think that the School of Meteorology is much more open today than they were back 15 years ago when I started. Making sure you're talking with the School of Meteorology, you're talking with the university, you're talking with, you have specific mentors that are helpful. Getting someone who's on your side, like an advisor, who can help you navigate the university challenges and the bureaucracy. I think that there's lots of different ways that it can be done. It's just making sure you really have a good idea of what you're looking for. I think that's key. And when I had to go through all the trials and tribulations, the question I got asked the most from the college and university was, why do you want to do this? What do you want to do this? And in fact, early on, a geography professor actually told me my degree would be worthless. He told me that outright. He said, your degree would be worthless. No one would want you. I would disagree. In fact, I would highly disagree today. I think that, not to be egotistical, but I do think that my background is one of the most highly sought out things that we can in my area. It may not be what everyone else wants, but in my area, it's exactly what they need. They need someone who can talk weather. They need someone who knows how to talk weather. So I would say it was highly valuable in the area that I'm in because that's exactly what they're looking for. And so you're going to find your naysayers who are going to try and stay pure to the science or the field. But if you really want that, make sure you know what you want to do with it and why you want to do that. And find someone who's on your side. If you can't find somebody like, an advisor or professor, reach out to myself or even Katie. I know she's taken lots of other social science classes too. And there's a couple others around here who have done interdisciplinary degrees, and I'm sure they would always be willing to help out. So find those friends who can help you. Either think through the process or find, who knows someone that you can talk to. So, myself, Katie, or others here in the room know who's on your side. They know who has your back and who's willing to fight for you. Because you need someone who's willing to fight for you. I was fortunate to have that, and it was a long time coming, but you got to have somebody to fight for. So, like I said, I do think the university is much more open to it these days. I know that the university was considering actually adding emergency management as a degree program at the bachelor's level. I spoke with their faculty in August about it, so I hope that happens because I think that there's a real opportunity here at OU to lead that way, to be the pioneer of weather-focused emergency management. That's not out there. There's a niche right there. It's low-hanging fruit, really. Take it, go with it. You want to produce out emergency management with weather backgrounds all day long. They'll take you. So, support those kinds of things. Find your friends, find your advisors that'll help you get involved. Okay, with the locals, with nonprofits, with whoever. Find those internships. There's all kinds of opportunities out there to kind of understand things and find those people that you're really, really looking after. And don't add too much to yourself. Just stick with what you know, stick with what you think you need. Okay, but find those friends who are really going to be on your side, who are going to help you make sure you have that support from your faculty or whoever. And if you can't find that, like I said, find someone that can get that for you because they're out there. Just got to find them. So. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Yeah.
What is the hardest event you've had to work in recent?
That's a good question. I'd have to say it was the I can't remember what day it was, May 27th maybe, where it was, we had the high risk, I think, in Oklahoma. We thought, the apocalypse that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Fortunately, the apocalypse that didn't happen. I would have to say maybe that event, because the notions of that were quite intense of what could happen that day. Fortunately, they didn't. But also when you're yourself under the threat, it just adds to it. So we were under the threat, and I had lots of people that were involved. I had a lot of moving parts. I had people in the field. I had people I was trying to, facilitate leadership's decision-making process. So really just trying to, it wasn't so much that it didn't work out the way that we had thought. That wasn't the problem. The problem was, for me on my end, was making sure that we had all the right people in the right places if it did work out that way. Fortunately, it didn't, but making sure that all the moving parts were where they needed to be, either out of harm's way or unfortunately in harm's way when it happened. So I would say that was probably one of the more challenging events for me in the 6 years I've been here.
Any other questions? No? You can speak up.
Oh, yeah. I would imagine emergency management is a stressful job. How do you manage that stress?
Good question. Honestly, I could be better at it, probably. Certainly, I will say though that me personally, I think I'm just naturally inclined to handling crises. So I always joke around and say that when everything is normal, steady state, I'm a ball of anxiety. But as soon as something's going on or happens, I am calm. And Bill always likes to say that I'm calm as cool as a cucumber. Because that's exactly what happens. I get very, very unanxious in disasters and crises. That's just my nature. So if it's a normal sunny day, I might be real anxious. But when everything's going down, I see very clearly. I see things in slow motion. So that's just a unique characteristic to myself. But it does get stressful after 6 years. It has become a little bit more habitual. But finding that time to make sure that I am getting enough sleep because I don't, getting the right food because I don't, drinking enough because I don't, making sure that I am taking the time to step back. So for me personally, I have sort of found a pattern that works, that's more regimented. I have a schedule of when I'm sending things out, when I'm doing briefings, when I'm getting phone calls. I'm making sure that overnight, there's a couple hour period between when the SPC Outlook comes out and when I gotta be up for the morning briefing. And I always try and take, we always call it my severe weather nap. Okay, there's about 3 hours there. I always make sure that I'm resting for those 3 hours. Okay, so even if it's small little things like that, or if I have 15 minutes in a day, or if I can go home an hour early one day, things like that. So it can be a trade-off. I might work 16 hours one day and then maybe 7 the next. So just finding those little pieces of time, making sure that I am keeping, food and water around, making sure that I'm not trying to stress too much. I'm making sure that I am a little more comfortable with the way things are. It is more of a habitual pattern for me, but I can certainly areas for improvement 100%, but I do try in those little areas by making sure I have food, water, and taking those little naps here and there as I can. So.
Any other straggling questions?
Questions about this, or thinking about it, or FEMA, emergency management? You don't like any of it, it's okay. It might not be for you.
Straggling questions, feel free to come up.
Absolutely, yeah, my information's here at the bottom of the slide. Tyler or co-counsel has the information. Reach out, like I said, to myself, to your colleagues. You have plenty of great colleagues here, your fellow students, David here with the city. There's so many people. You're lucky to live in this environment and work and go to school environment that really the options are endless. It's really up to you what you want to do in finding that path forward. So, this is a great place to be because you have so many opportunities and you can pick whatever it is you want and moving forward, and you don't have to do just one thing. But, getting that degree that you're getting right now is extremely valuable, and there's a lot you can do with it and put it out in that world, whether it be in data analytics or whether it be in support or whether it just be, education. Some people get their med degrees and go be teachers. We need that too. So, just trying to get that information out there the best we can. I always say, I spend a lot of money on my education. I want to give it to you for free because I feel like I'm getting a better bargain. Okay, so I spent $100,000 and I give it to a lot of people. I feel like we got more for our money that way. So that's my plan. But that's just me. So, but yeah, reach out. Don't be afraid. There's 800 people in this building. I bet somebody's got something for you, and I myself personally would be happy to, and I know others here would be just as happy to speak with y'all, and maybe it isn't for you. But like I said, you need to know that too. So if you don't know, find out. Anything else?
Thank you very much. So that's going to be... thank you guys for coming out. I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week at the OWL and SCAN Collaborative Hurricane Workshop with Dr. Michael Brennan next Wednesday at 6:30 in this room. So until then, I will see y'all later.
It looks pretty.